This really happened. I saw it with my own eyes. Maybe it didn't happen as I see it, but more on that later. So me and my 3 friends from university were planning to go out camping. One of us, Darren, said his family had a cabin in northeast Wyoming. His grandparents used to live there. Now they're dead and there's no one stopping us from going there. Of course, me, Michael, and Celeste dislike the idea of staying in a cabin. It's a fucking camping trip. We have to go sleep in the wilderness. So Darren told us about the woods near the cabin. I don't remember much about the trip, but I remember we made a couple of racist jokes after seeing a sign about the Black Hills. Michael, who is black, was not happy. The car pulled up outside the cabin. That's practically a mansion, not a cabin, Celeste said. It was 2 floors tall and pretty big, about the width and length of 3 buses put end to end, or maybe less. I'm not good with measurements. Darren went inside to check if the place was still clean. We waited impatiently until he came out, and then we lugged our shit down through the forest. Darren had brought along a shotgun, so we weren't too scared of bears or whatever shit, or didn't want to appear scared in front of the others. After we set up the tents, we started gathering firewood. That's when I first heard it, some mechanical groaning sound accompanied by a soft murmur. I thought it was a car at first, and I looked around for its source, but the sound died down, and I continued picking up wood. I was already feeling lethargic. I returned to the campsite and started the fire. We ate canned food, roasted marshmallows, pretty typical shit. I thought I heard bushes rustling, but it was only a rabbit. Mist rolled in soon, and we were all tired as fuck and wanted to sleep. Darren was annoyed. The hell? There was never any mist when I was growing up. We told him to shut up, and we stuffed our shit into our tents while the mist thickened. I got into one tent, followed by Michael. Celeste and Darren went into the other. I couldn't sleep though because of the slow drone which I first attributed to insects. After about half an hour, it became obvious that the sound was the same from the one I heard earlier. I also heard thumping noises, one loud one followed by a soft, slithery noise, and then a slightly softer one. It wasn't rocket science to figure out that someone was walking around outside. I at first thought it was Darren, and opened the tent flaps to tell him to stop it. The mist got in the tent almost immediately. I could make out a dark shape crouching at around the tent. I shuffled towards it. Turns out Darren had heard the noise too. We stared at each other nervously while the footsteps continued. We agreed that there was nothing we could do now, and I went back inside my tent, nervously fingering the knife Darren had provided me with before we arrived. Maybe it was some native tribesman, or a crazed psychopath, or a fucked up animal. The footsteps stopped after a while, and I was pretty relieved. Silence for a few minutes. Then the sound, murmuring and mechanical grinding starting up over again. It was loud enough that I could make out what the murmuring was. It seemed to be children chanting, coming from right outside our tent. I snatched up the knife and tried to open the tent flap, but it got stuck. I wasted some time untangling my hand, and then I heard a low, raspy laugh and an unintelligible mutter. I opened the tent flaps. There was nothing there. I looked around and noticed that someone had scratched a picture into the ground, a childish-looking picture of a face. It was becoming too spooky for me to handle at this point. I woke Michael up and told him about the situation. We agreed we had to leave. I started shoveling the essentials into a bag while Michael woke up Darren and Celeste. We all had torchlights, but they were faulty or something. Switching them on in the mist resulted only in a faint glow. Darren cursed and started to lead the way, stumbling around. "What if you get lost?" Michael asked. "I won't. I've been on this trail thousands of times." After about 10 minutes of walking, it became painfully obvious Darren didn't have a fucking clue where he was going. He was sweating and looking all around. Eventually he led us down a narrow path until we bumped into something. I saw several stone blocks arranged in precise patterns. Each of the blocks had carvings on them, and in the middle was a particularly large block with a large symbol. An inverted triangle combined with another triangle within a circle. It wasn't a pentagram, but it looked somewhat familiar. "Fuck it. This wasn't here. Let's turn back." Darren snapped and we obeyed. "Why is there a fucking huge ant mound in the middle of the forest?" Celeste asked. Michael said she was blind if she thought that was an ant mound. He'd seen an archway or something. I pitched in. Darren said he'd seen metal spikes rising from the ground. We started arguing, convinced the mist was playing tricks on us. Darren wanted to return and prove what he'd seen. Eventually, Celeste told us to shut up and keep going. We hit in a straight line. Darren claimed to be navigating by landmarks. I hope he was right. I kept looking behind me. I was having that feeling where you think someone's watching you or stalking you. I nearly tripped over Celeste when she fell. She shook her head and got to her feet. The ground was muddy as fuck, and it was getting even mistier. If not for the torchlight, I would have no idea who she was. More to ensure we didn't get lost than as a gesture of affection. I pulled her along as Darren got more and more distant. "I recognize that tree," Darren shouted. "We're getting to the cabin." I again had the feeling that something was watching me. My gut was screaming at me something, somewhere was wrong. I realized that the droning sound was back, softer, but still present. I started looking around, panicking, did a head count, or more accurately, a silhouette count. Me, Celeste still holding my hand, Darren in the lead, Michael to the left. Who the fuck was the guy beside Michael? My grip on Celeste's hand tightened, and I quickened my pace. I thought about shouting out, but I was worried that if I did, the thing would turn and jump on Michael or something. I didn't know what to do. I ran my fingers along the handle of my knife. Then the cabin appeared. Out of nowhere, the mist was starting to disintegrate around us, and it was now possible to make out who everyone was. Darren with his shotgun, Michael, who was the only black guy around. I looked at the thing next to Michael. She looked just like Celeste. The thing whose hand I was holding leaned in front of me. It wasn't Celeste. It was like a mannequin version of her that had been deformed. Hair was straggly and long, shadowing her face. Eyes were bloodshot and glowing. Mouth was... fuck. Mouth gives me nightmares even now. Fucking wide and much bigger than it should be. Bared in a fucked up grin. It looked almost as though someone had turned it on its side. There were fucking holes all over its fucking face. And I swear, I saw worms wriggling around in there or something. I should have ran or screamed, but my body was clenching up for no reason. The thing turned and walked into the mist. I caught up with the others as they entered the house, practically in fucking tears. They couldn't find the car and were arguing about where he put it. I ranted about what I'd seen in the forest, and they didn't believe me until they heard that droning noise again. Darren kicked the door shut and locked it. We backed away as we heard a thumping noise against the walls. Michael was whimpering. Everything went quiet for a while. Then I heard the most horrifying sound I'd ever heard. It was like a group of children had started humming, then halfway through decided to start screaming. We fled the room. I wasn't thinking straight and separated from the others. I ended up in the kitchen. There was a window there, closed. I saw Michael walking outside and was about to call him when he turned, and I saw his jaw hanging all the way to chest level. He started walking towards the window and I pulled the blinds down. For a brief second, there was panic. I bumped into someone and was fucking scared it was a shapeshifter. But then Michael swore and punched me. I'd never been so glad to be punched. We groped around for the light switch. It was still on. There was a dripping sound and my hair felt sticky as water dripped on it. "The ceiling's leaky," I complained. Darren stumbled over and held out his hand to feel the dripping. It stopped. Celeste hit the light switch off and on. The lights came back on. The lights in the room directly adjacent, the kitchen, went off. We could hear the dripping again, but from the kitchen. I wondered if the light bulbs were melting or something. Darren told us to follow him upstairs. The kitchen lights went back on, and the ones in the stairway leading to what I assumed was the basement went off. Things were so screwed by then that no one questioned what was going on. We went upstairs. That was when shit started piling up. An inexplicable sense of nausea and horror suddenly hit me. I suddenly felt revolted by the walls and repulsed by my friends. I lingered at the back. Celeste dropped to the floor and threw up before collapsing there. Michael turned as if to help her, then his knees buckled and I watched him as he collided with the wall and then slowly dragged himself away. I could hear Darren's footsteps. I hit the floor and gagged, but nothing came out. I kept gagging. The drone was getting louder, with the mechanical grinding now a roar. I felt dizzy, lightheaded, Disorientated, I crawled on my hands and knees past Celeste. I remember my fingers brushing hers and wanting to help her, but too scared of something I couldn't see. The corridors started swimming in weird colors. It was like I was tripping out while on a high fever. I felt fucking cold, but at the same time my body felt as if it were burning. I remembered a Wikipedia article I'd once read about paradoxal undressing. I wondered if that would be my fate. I managed to make it to one bedroom. The sound died down to a drone once more. I pulled myself up to the bed and collapsed onto it. I couldn't sleep, and wouldn't have if I could. I just wanted to rest. I waited for the world to stop spinning. Then I pulled myself upright, and I looked out the window. Darren was looking right back at me. He was crouched in a tree, with his head tilted to one side and his tongue lolling out. His tongue was unnaturally long. I stared back, not being able to register what was going on. The next moment, he was right fucking at the window. He didn't jump or anything. He was in the tree one moment, and at the window the next. I noticed that his eyes were small beads, sunken into his head. His tongue had holes, and in the holes were worms. He pressed his face against the glass. I pulled the blinds down as the children humming and screaming noise began. I pulled out the knife and briefly entertained the thought of attacking the creature when the noise stopped. I cautiously pulled up the blinds. The glass had turned black, inky black. An imprint of Darren's face was present, mouth twisted grotesquely, eyes gigantic glowing white pits. I prodded it with a knife. It was an unmoving 2D picture. I pulled the blinds down. Celeste came through the door. She looked pale and disheveled. I spun to face her and she threw up on the floor again. I dragged her to the bed and laid her down. She was gasping for air, as if something was suffocating her. I remember thinking some pervert stuff that I shouldn't have been thinking at the time, then reminded myself there was something on the loose. Eventually, her breathing became more regular. I asked her where the others were. She shrugged. I heard her voice at the door. Let me in! Let me in! God, let me in there! I immediately pulled my knife out and placed it at Celeste's throat. Her eyes grew wide with shock and alarm, but they could have been fake. What are you doing? No, I'm the real one. The one out there. That's the imposter, she insisted. I was kind of in a trance, unsure of what to do, staring down at her. I noticed her hands were moving behind her back. She had a knife there too. I would have stabbed her in self-defense if the voice in the door hadn't changed to become some low, deep, guttural voice. Then it became high-pitched, like a little girl's. I pulled the knife away. Celeste immediately wriggled out from under me and put hers at my throat. Hers was curved and wickedly sharp. It reminded me of a kukuri. I just stared at it stupidly, too surprised to respond. When she pulled it away and got off the bed, I snapped myself out of the trance. Now the nausea was returning. I got to the door and opened it. There was nothing there but a trail of black liquid. I thought about the dripping downstairs and realized, with dull alarm rather than sharp horror, that it had been causing the light outages, walking above us on the ceiling, with its fluids dripping on us. I ran my hands through my hair, touching all the sticky parts from the liquid, and looked up. The thing was on the ceiling, as expected. It was close to a corner, about to turn. It seemed like an albino white male with fucking long limbs, especially the knees, which bent backwards like a bird's. He had fingers instead of toes, and all 20 of them were elongated. He was facing away from me, but its head suddenly swiveled 180 degrees and stared at me. I started choking up as it suffocated. It was hard to breathe. The thing opened its mouth, slowly and deliberately. I thought it was about to devour me with its tongue snaked out. That's probably the most fucking terrifying thing up till then. On the tip of the tongue was my face. Like a fucking tumor, eyes closed, lips upturned in some sort of psycho smile. There's a legend somewhere that if you see a doppelganger, you die. I thought of that legend. But then the creature rounded the corner. It was gone. I lost it and followed. Vision hazy. My heartbeat suddenly seemed ear-splitting to me. I was stumbling because my legs somehow seemed unable to coordinate. I suddenly realized I had come to the top of the staircase without realizing it. I pitched forward and toppled down. Once I lay down at the bottom, my body just seemed to shut down. I couldn't move, couldn't even turn my head. There was something dripping on my back. My eyelids seemed heavy and started closing of their own accord. I saw a white foot with fucking long fingers for toes step into view. When my eyes opened, Celeste was shaking me. She was on the brink of tears and her voice was cracking. Get up, get up. The fucker was in your skin. The fucker was in your skin. I was naked, somehow, and my head hurt. I was about to ask her what happened, but she started pulling me backwards toward the door. We toppled out and stumbled towards Darren's car, which was still parked there, but in a different location now. I was glad to be alive. The mist had stopped completely. Celeste was downright crying now. She pushed me into the back seat. Michael was there, huddled up and face buried in his knees. Some clothes, stained with blood, were beside him. They were mine. I put them on. It was tight changing in the car, but I made it work. Darren immediately stepped on the pedal, but nothing happened. He swore and did it again. I noticed that Celeste was armed with a shotgun. I asked him what was going on. The thing joined us. He looked like you. We got the fuck out of the house and found the car. We were halfway down the road, then Michael started screaming. I looked at Michael. He had a glazed over look in his eyes. The thing burst out of your clothes and jumped out of the car. Michael had the shotgun. He was firing out the window. We saw the thing run all the way back to the house. At the motherfucking speed of light. God damn. It was in my skin? Yeah. I looked down at myself. I wonder if I had been possessed or if worse, the thing had cut off my skin and worn it like a coat. I shuddered at the thought of anything crawling around in my skin. I turned to Michael and asked him if he was alright. The thing talked to me. I asked him about what. He didn't respond. He just kept huddled up there. I realized he was sobbing. The car jolted into motion. Darren fist pumped as the car started accelerating. I turned back towards the cabin and saw the albino thing standing on the roof of the house, watching us. I shuddered and turned back. Celeste screamed. The thing was in front of the car, crouched on the windshield. It opened its mouth and my tongue face slithered out. Celeste fired the shotgun, the glass shattering, and it was thrown backwards. Darren shrieked and I saw blood coming from his face. Something pierced my face and I realized it was glass. The car skidded to a stop. The car doors opened without any discernible reason and I fell out. I don't know how long I lay there, body disobeying my commands to move. Darren said at least 5 minutes. Celeste disagreed, saying she came in less than a minute. It felt like hours. The thing lay directly across from me, eyes closed as if it were sleeping. I wish I could close my eyes. Its mouth hung open and I saw myself again emerging. I love you, I love you, I love you. It said it over and over again, occasionally mixing in the I want to be you. It was coming close to me. I wondered if it was gonna bite me to death. The thing's eyes shot open and I realized it was gonna kiss me. I managed to regain some control and instinctively twisted back from it. I guess that was what saved me. There was a sound like an explosion and blood spouted from the thing. Celeste was standing over it. Her face and body were bleeding, and she had this spaced out psychotic look in her eyes. She had just fired the shotgun. My face looked directly at me. I am you, it whispered. She fired again, and I saw my own face begin rotting, nothing more than a skeleton in front of me. The thing's head flowered open. That's the best word I could find to describe it. Its head kind of split and split again, peeling away. I saw faces, lots of them, all of them inside of its head. I think I saw Celeste and Michael's faces. They were singing. They were the source of the children's hums, singing and screaming in the center where the brain should be. There was a single red cat-like eye thing that was rotating in its socket and producing the mechanical grinding sound. Celeste fired one last time. The thing sort of withered away, becoming wrinkled and smaller and rotten until it just disappeared. Celeste dropped the shotgun. I started twitching and spasming as control of my body returned to me. Eventually, I stood up. We got into the car silently. Darren was bleeding too, but no one said anything. We drove back to the city in silence. We explained away the car damage as being attacked by some crazy thieves. We had our shit patched up. Michael was still in a PTSD-like state. I hear he was like that for a while, When I asked him what he thought of the incident later, he denied it ever happened, with compelling conviction. I don't know if he forced himself not to remember or if he genuinely knows nothing of it. Darren insists I got the location wrong and that it was actually near to Yellowstone, while Celeste says we're both wrong and it was near the south. I know what I saw, but I can't remember the exact place. This happened 2 months ago. We still refrain from talking about it. If you were expecting some huge twist or something, you'd be disappointed. I still don't know what we met out there. I don't want to know. Actually, I still have nightmares about my own face, running away, shouting, "I am you." I know for sure I'm not fucking going camping ever again.
B15. Live in New Mexico. This place sucks, man. It's hot. Why not California? Live in a pretty nice house. Outskirts of town. About 30-minute walk into town proper. 5 minutes in a car. Big backyard. Like, bigger than the house. And on the other side of the fence is a straight-up forest. Hardly even 20 minutes away from Gila National Forest. This is like summer though. June or July, or somewhere in there. So nobody goes into the forest. Brother John, call him Johnny, is in the Marines. He's on shore leave. Home for a week or two. So what does he do? Wrangles up a bunch of his military friends, about 8, and me, to go camping with them in the forest behind our house. Tells me I can invite a friend or two of mine. Bring my hunting rifle, in case they feel like going out on a deer hunt or something. Sure, why not? Johnny's been away for a long time. Invite my best friend, Sarah, to go camping with us. She's like, of course, lol. Now, a word on John. He loves scaring the piss out of me. So the entire time people are arriving to our house, I'm expecting him to pull some sort of stuff. Keeping my cell phone in my bra because we aren't that far away from the house, and it's not like we won't get any service when we're in the woods. Everything's fine for about 30 minutes. I'm sitting with Sarah, and we're giggling. All of John's Marine buddies are good guys, but really rowdy. They have beer, offer us some. Sarah goes, F that. But I've got nothing against beer, so why not? I take one beer, and that's it. They may be good guys, but they're guys, and I'm not about to get drunk with like 8 of them around. For the most part, everything was normal, until I felt something watching me from the woods. I looked around for Johnny, because I wanted to ask him if he invited anyone else to go camping with us. He's nowhere to be seen. Worried, but Johnny also has a rifle, so he'll be fine. Take up spots on the edge of the campsite, so we can watch the guys. About 20 minutes there, and there are guys running around shirtless, laughing and hooting and hollering, and stuff, wearing camo fatigues, and hiking boots, and having a good time. And Sarah and I are busy with the eye candy, when I feel something grab my shoulder from behind. Jesus Christ. It's Johnny. He snuck up behind me. I'm mad, but not about to go back inside or anything. Eventually, the campsite gets moved a little deeper into the forest. We can barely see the fence from where we are. Sun is definitely going down now, and in the dark, the house and the fence fades from view. Light a campfire. Sure, why not? Dudes are dancing around it shirtless. Everyone's laughing. Around our house, usually the forest lit up with noise around sundown. I'm talking like birds and stuff. It always got pretty noisy, but tonight, it's dead silent. Not a single owl or bird or anything. We don't care. It's a party. Sarah is flirting hardcore with some of the guys, and that's sorta gross to me, but only because I, A, associate them with my brother, and B, they're all 21 and up. Suddenly, we hear this. I don't know. A well? A moan? Sounded like two people at the same time, high-pitched and low-pitched. Off in the forest, everyone gets quiet. Thank God for Marines. They put their shirts on and put away the beer for a second.
Maybe it's a bear.
When have you ever heard a bear like that? At this point, we notice that the forest is silent, just dead silent. Everyone is getting a little nervous now, especially Sarah.
Let's go back to the house. Come on, guys. Really, we should go back to the house.
Johnny's buddy Martin basically tells her to woman up and settle down. Sarah gets mad and clams up. We hear it again, closer this time. Johnny's got his rifle. I go to get mine. But like an idiot, I left it at home. There are 3 people with hunting rifles, including Johnny and one guy with a pistol. Suddenly, everything reeks. I'm talking about rotting meat and vomit. It's so bad that one of Johnny's friends gags. Hardcore Marine has been overseas for like 3 months. He gags from the smell that is coming out of the woods. We form up around us because protect the civilians, I guess. 8 guys with Johnny, Sarah and I in the middle. Now, living in New Mexico, we hear a lot of Spanish horror stories and such. So there are a couple jokes floating around about La Llorona, the one who cries, which is a pretty popular ghost story. Sarah hates that sort of stuff.
Shut up, guys. Right now. Seriously.
Martin tells her to cool her tits. It's just a joke. She starts to reply when the campfire goes out. Mass panic. The guys are shouting jargon to each other, and 2 guys break formation to try and get the campfire back going again. Sarah starts screaming and says,
"Somebody just touched my chest."
Fire goes back on. The guys get back into formation. Sarah is sobbing, covering her boobs with her arms. Johnny has his rifle raised, looking around. The guys start to settle down when Johnny starts screaming at the dude in the back of the group. He's just standing there, back to the rest of us, per circle formation, or whatever, and he isn't moving at all. At first, I have no idea what the issue is. I mean, maybe he drank a little too much or something. I try to calm Johnny down, but he is in full man mode and can't get him to chill.
"Johnny, what the F is the matter with you?"
He's screaming,
"Tango, tango, tango, tango."
but the other guys don't know what the F he's talking about. Look around to make sure everyone's still there, and I nearly poop myself. There are 9 people in the circle. Nope.jpg. A second later, the other guys catch on. The 2 standing on either side of whatever this is leap back, like it's about to explode. All 3 rifles and the pistol leveled at this guy's head. He doesn't even move as 8 dudes start shouting for him to get on the ground and put his hands on his head. Hear something rustle in the bushes off to the right. 8 dudes turn with military precision to look, and Sarah and I scream because the second they look away, Number 9 starts to look over his shoulder and then vanishes. Nope out of the circle. Nope down the hill towards my house. Nope straight into the fence because F it. I can see where I'm going. Luckily, I'm a bit stockily built and got plenty of muscle from hiking and hunting in the woods, and the fence is old and weak. I go right through the fence, cut myself in 3 places, and get a fat splinter in my elbow. But I'm back to my backyard at least. Johnny, Sarah, and the others come hurtling down the hill after me, fall in through the fence.
Tango sighted.
In the light of the campfire, we see it standing in our campsite, looking down at us. The light is sketchy at best, by this point, especially since it's standing in front of the fire. But from the fence, it looks like its head is jittering back and forth on its neck, like those twitchy fingers in Jacob's ladder. 3 gunshots. When the muzzle flash dies down, It's gone again. Hear the wail/moan again. And then, closer than ever, we hear this freaking gibbering laughter, like hyena level stuff.
Shoot it.
Now they're wasting ammo out of fear, shooting at shadows in the forest. Sarah has practically pooped herself by this time. She's sobbing and screaming and trying to get me on my feet so that we can get back inside. Johnny tells the others to get through the fence already. When we all look back, it's halfway down the hill, shaking like it's vomiting or something, but there's no sound or anything coming out of its mouth. Get in the house, through the fence, sprints across the yard. Johnny pulling me along because my arm hurts and I can't do anything. Make it back inside, lock the back door, crowd around it with guns. Martin helps me with my effed up arm, and Johnny grabs my hunting rifle from my room, locking all the doors and windows in the house as he goes. Sit around the door all night, literally too piss scared to leave our spots. Parents come home from town at 12:15, and we all shit bricks. My mom and dad refuse to believe us, even though I'm all bloody. Johnny's gun has clearly been fired, and he shows them the clip, and we're all clearly spooked. They got mad at us for A, locking all the doors, and B, leaving a fire in the forest, so they just go right to bed.
Anon's mom is right. We gotta put out that fire.
Johnny straight up laughs. Like, who's going to be stupid enough to go back out there? Sarah volunteers. Are you kidding me? Sarah started talking about how she left her purse or something back at the campsite, so eventually, Marvin, whom I'm beginning to think at some point is kind of a dickbag, tells the others that it's probably just shadows and stuff. Sarah goes with Marvin back to the campsite. Marvin takes a pistol. We sit there for like 10 minutes, getting antsier and antsier. Jesus Christ. Martin starts screaming us to let us in, calling us all sorts of names, and the like. Johnny opens the door.
Where's Sarah?
Doesn't know.
Where the fuck is Sarah?
Apparently, when they got to the campsite, when Marvin put out the fire, Sarah started giggling like a hyena and then vanished. He got the F out of there. Johnny started arguing with Marvin about leaving a civilian alone in the forest, and I'm just ready to pass out or cry from exhaustion and my arm. Johnny and Martin are screaming at each other. Mom comes in from her bedroom and tells them to shut up. People are trying to sleep. What's going on? I start crying, tell her that Sarah's gone.
What do you mean gone?
F if I know. Marvin fills my mom in, and she goes to call the police. Johnny tells her to wait in her room and lock it, and her window, and the bathroom door. Marvin calls Johnny an idiot and tells him that they should get all the civilians rounded up in the same place. Johnny starts to respond when there's a thump on the back door. Knocking. But it's horribly wrong. No rhythm or anything. Sounded like... raspy voice like, completely inhuman, says,
Tango.
From the other side of the door. Sounds like...
Tango. Where's Sarah?
Marvin shouts to the door. Loud fucking scream, then the sound of someone hauling ass across the yard.
Where's Sarah?
Devolves into guttural, atrocious snarling. Then, quiet. After 3 or 4 minutes of this, I swear to God, it felt like an eternity. We hear snuffling outside the door. Smell is back. We hear whimpering, then giggles from just outside the door near the bottom. Whimpering like a dog or animal. Then, very, very softly, from the bottom of the door,
Sarah. Sarah.
Everything in my body goes cold. My stomach does a flip, and the guys are too freaked out to even shoot for a second. Johnny puts a rifle round through the door, but by the time he shoots, the thing must have moved, because seconds later, we hear a hyena laughter up in the hill again. Watch the back door until the police show up. Someone is in the forest messing with us. They investigate, come back in half an hour, and say that their dogs are going apeshit, but they can't find anything. Have we been doing drugs, etc.? Alcohol, but that's it. Police leave, and we don't hear the thing again. Nobody felt safe going home that night, and my bedroom had a window looking out into the backyard, so everyone slept in the living room. The next day, we got all our stuff from the campsite, and I went to Sarah's house to tell her parents that Sarah had gone missing in the forest. Sarah lived down the street from us, and their backyard didn't lead into the forest like ours, but it was really close. Sarah's mom opens the door. Explain.
What are you talking about? I heard Sarah come in early this morning.
Noped out of there. We moved about 3 weeks later to California. Before anybody asks us, I didn't go to see Sarah at all after that. She didn't show up to school, and I refused to go outside alone without my rifle, so I was sort of a shut-in.
Okay, Kay. I've put some thought into this, and I've decided to share my WTF/nope/Innowood story with you. I wasn't gonna do it, but after seeing a few other threads with people discussing weird stuff, I figured I might as well. And maybe I'll get a solution for my one and only unanswered question. What I'm about to tell you is 100% honest truth, and I'll try to be as detailed as possible. Firstly, some brief background info on me, which I only offer so you might understand my behavior and mindset. I am in my early 30s. I'm an active duty Marine who's been in the Corps for over 15 years, a gunnery sergeant. I have quite a bit of training along with real-world combat experience. I am rational, logical, and a skeptical person who does not believe in the supernatural or spiritual, and I'm a long-time lurker here at K and 4Chan in general. So, this all took place in the Californian Mojave Desert, at a place called Joshua Tree National Park. 3 weeks ago over the Thanksgiving holiday, I often go out on short camping trips, and this time I was out for one night of camping before the weather got too cold to tolerate it. This is a huge desert area, with almost no vegetation other than the scrub brush and cacti, large mountains with very flat valleys, and hardly any wildlife to be seen. I go out there to do some hiking and get away from gadgets for a while and relax. The sunsets, sunrises, and starry nights are really amazing. When I go out alone, I leave my wife a map of where I'm going on my trip identical to the one I also carry, along with a set timeline. I usually take a rug with a Duraflame log, so I don't have to burn the already sparse vegetation. Basic survival gear with food and water, and I carry a Ruger 77.357. It's a bolt-action .357 rifle that uses 5-round rotary magazines, of which I take 3 more. I carry this because it's a national park and no one gives me a hard time about it. It's reliable, very accurate, light, cheap to shoot, and powerful enough to kill a coyote from 100 yards if I need to. The coyotes out here aren't deadly, but they are pretty damn fearless and are used to people, so it's a necessity. I almost always camp on the large rock outcroppings now, because one time I woke up and saw no less than 6 coyotes standing in the dark, just outside the firelight, watching me, pacing quietly. It was actually kind of neat to be so close to them, and we sat watching each other for a while, until one started edging in too close, and I had to shoo them away with a warning shot. Anyway, this particular night was uneventful, aside from the coyotes making a ton of obnoxious noise around 0400. It was also pretty damn chilly, and since I was already awake, I started heading back before the dawn even broke. I could make pretty good time and distance on foot, so my campsite was about 4 miles out, farther than most people bother to venture. In fact, I've never ran into anyone that far out now that I think about it, even though it's not that far. So I'm heading back, and I'm hiking back down a large hill that has boulders and crevices all along it. Nothing too crazy, definitely not rock climbing or anything. I stay away from dangerous areas since I'm alone. I get no further than 400 or 500 yards from my actual campsite, and there, lying on the ground in front of me, I see a blue and white knit beanie cap, the kind with tassels on the side. I stopped and started scanning the area, but I saw nothing out of the ordinary. I called out with a, "Hello?" and I got no reply. I walked over and reached down to pick it up, and as soon as I touched it, I heard a faint "hello" off to my left. I stood up quickly, but saw nothing. Walking further to my left, I saw a large crevice in the hill that went down about 30 or 40 feet and curved hard to the right among a few very large boulders. I couldn't really see anything down there because it was still too dark and the angle wasn't good, but as soon as I had a good look down into it, I heard a much louder "hello" come up from below. My mind clicked into gear and I thought, shit, someone got lost, probably just spent a long cold night trapped down there. "Are you okay? Are you hurt? Do you need any help?" I called down. The voice came back. "Please, come help me." I realized, holy shit, that's a child's voice, or it sounded like it. So I tossed my pack and rifle on the deck and started yanking out some 550 cord as I yelled down, "Don't worry, I'm gonna help you, stay calm." I tied a big loop off around the stone near me, then wrapped it around my arm. I came quickly back to the edge. I started to lean forward to find the best way down when several things happened. I yelled, "Stay calm," and then immediately got a whiff of the most awful smell I've ever smelt as I leaned over. Imagine what a long dead animal rotting in a mud puddle on a hot day would smell like. Just like that. In the gloom below, I saw a slight movement, just a shape, but far larger than any child could have been. And then I heard the child's voice. "Please, come help me." I froze. That phrase had sounded exactly the same as before. And I mean exactly. In tone, inflection, cadence, everything. It was so exact that it made it weird. A few seconds went by as I hesitated. Then again from below, exactly as before. "Please, come help me." Now, I don't scare easily, but I was suddenly overcome with unexplained fear. Not a fear I've ever felt before, like an adrenaline pumping kind you'd feel from a car accident or firefight, but a gut-wrenching predator and I'm the prey type feeling made me panic. I went into full flight mode. I reeled back, scooting on my hands and feet and grabbed my rifle panting. I remember thinking to myself, this isn't enough, I should have brought my M1A. And a second later I heard scraping and scrabbling sounds come up from the crevice. I stood up and fucking ran, left all my gear behind, just rifle in hand. Right down the hill I heard panting, huffing coming from behind me, and then a loud shit. "Please, come help me." I was sprinting in the dawn, nearly hysterical with fear. And then I was back, through the park entrance and straight to the office, where I started banging on the door. Hell, I was kicking it even, yelling for help. A park ranger came from around the side of the building and told me to knock it the fuck off. Thinking about it now, I realized he had his hand on his pistol and I very nearly got myself shot with all my bonkers behavior. I told him the only thing I could think of that would make sense. I was coming back from my campsite and someone attacked me and chased me. He looks at me and says, "Who?" I tell him I have no idea. I never got a look, and that I could take him to where it all happened, where all my gear was. So after a brief chat with another ranger, this old fella and I get into his ATV and head back to the hill. We get up to the crevice in the rock, and sure as shit, my gear's still there with the cord wrapped around the stone like I left it. But no one else is there, and no blue and white beanie either. The ranger gets a little pissed, and asks if I had been drinking or doing drugs. And after returning to the office and taking my statement, he tells me, "Maybe next time you come out here, you might want to leave the rifle at home. Okay, buddy?" So that's it. I headed home, took a shower and tried to figure it out. I decided that either some seriously fucked up kids just pranked the shit out of me, or that I had been almost robbed and killed by some tweakers in a desert hiking ambush. The only problem with these that I can't figure out is that if either one is true, then what was that fucking awful smell all about? Honestly, I don't know California legends that well, but I'll be the first to say it. Skinwalker. Basically, comrade, you met something that eats people, and a skeptic who thinks you're the 5,150th case. This means never return to that area again. 1, because the ranger might try to get charges on you for some reason, and 2, because whatever that was might remember you and decided to deliberately hunt you. I'm gonna look into this, but it's really hard to believe it, even after living through this. Also, my statement was actually filed as an actual report at the ranger's office, and is on the public record if anyone wants to verify that I'm telling the truth. Although I may have left out some of the more interesting parts of the encounter in the report, for obvious reasons. 29 palms? Are you an instructor out there, Gunny? I miss bouldering at Joshua Tree. Those were definitely some of the most beautiful night skies I've ever seen. Kind of haunting to think I was camping and drinking in Skinwalker territory. Yes, I'm an instructor with a year left to get out of here at 29 stumps. But I'd rather not get too detailed here on 4chan about my specifics. Okay, now, to people who say nothing crazy happens out here in this desert or the park, you obviously aren't a local who's lived here their whole life. I've lived in Yucca Valley my whole life, and I can tell you that in these super tiny towns there are several cases of people getting lost or going missing every year out here that you don't hear about, usually tourist types. It's not hard to keep it out of the news when your only real news outlet is a couple of town papers ran by 4 or 5 people each. It would be really bad for the tourism we have if word got out that people were going missing out here regularly. What usually happens is that people misjudge distances in the desert, thinking things are closer than they really are, and then the dryness dehydrates them quickly. Here's something that happened to someone I personally knew about 4 years ago, in the same desert that OP was in. A kid I went to high school with was apparently going through a rough time and decided to commit suicide. This guy drove out, parked his car, left a note in it, and headed out into the desert. A couple of days later, they finally found some of the guy's clothes and backpack with weed still in it, but never found the guy. Now, if you weren't friends with the family or locals from here, you'd never know these details. But the news never said a peep about it, not even a boy missing spot. Now, this was intentional, but my point is the same people get lost and go missing out here more often than you'd expect. Okay, I'm going to take my time to read up on this stuff. Right now, I think I need to take a break. Thinking about this over and over again makes me feel a bit nauseous. I will say that there is some weird shit out there in the desert. Plenty of meth heads and tweakers, old abandoned mine shafts, and hell, they even permanently shut down our training area a few months ago because they found another Native American site full of artifacts during a live engagement.
B. 17. Uncle is letting me stay at his old farm for the weekend. Just outside of this small town. Relatively quiet and lonely place. Huge open fields, surrounded by woods. There's a grain silo, and the barn with just a few animals. Chickens, 2 turkeys, a goat, and even a peacock, somehow. He drives into the city for the weekend to sleep with this girl he's into.
Anon, I'm leaving you the place. Just make sure to feed the animals once a day. And if you drink all the beer, pay for it.
He kinda winks at me. Cooluncle.jpg. Of course, invite friends and some girls over for drinking and romantic country walks. Also, GoldenEye, because fuck yeah. There's me, Eric, Robert, and Jeremy, along with Ellie, Deanna, and Jessica. Super into Diana, 8 out of 10 Hispanic Asian chick. Weirdest crush, NA. So, we start drinking, messing around in the garage. I tell everyone we should go into the barn and get up to the top area and mess around. We get up there, bring some food and some beer, start talking, get in a big circle. Diana sits right next to me. Boneralert.avi. Everything's normal at first. We start telling ghost stories. She starts telling us about La Llorona, or whatnot. Crying ghost lady. Mildly spooky, but she has a cute little mouse voice, so it loses atmosphere. Her head kind of falls on my shoulder. There's one of those hanging workman's lamp things lighting up the barn. I don't remember what they're called right now. Everyone's kind of silent, just thinking, sipping on their beer, or murmuring. I start to smell this disgusting smell, like rotted meat dipped in perfume. But it was sick. It was sick, but sweet. I pull it off as dead mice, or something dumb. I was kind of an idiot at 16. Still am, LOL. Put my arm around Diana. Ask if anyone wants more beer. Offer to go back to the house to get it.
Sure, idiot.
One of my friends, probably Robert. Get up, brush myself off, and head for the ladder to get down. The ladder is missing. Too annoyed to be scared, turned and asked who messed with the ladder. Everyone genuinely looks mystified at the missing ladder. Shrug. Decide it probably fell down, and I can't see it. Figure I'll just drop through the hole, brace myself for the drop, and put the ladder back up on the way back. I get to the edge of the hole, smell that gross smell again, and almost stop. But don't want to look like a scaredy cat. Drop my feet through the hole, start to lower myself down when I feel something wet smack against my exposed ankle. Push myself back up so fast, with the highest yelp I've ever made or heard. Scramble away from the hole.
What's up, idiot?
Probably Robert again. Wasn't in the mood. Either the turkeys have super long, wet necks now, or there's someone down there that grabbed my leg. Very funny, Anon.bmp. I'm serious, you guys. I kicked my leg out to show them where the guy or whatever touched me. There's this brownish, reddish goop on my ankle. It's sticky and smells like rotted meat put on display at a department store from before. What is that, Anon? One of the girls asks. I have no idea, so I shake my head. Tell them I'm gonna chill up here for a bit, and someone else can head down if they want. Eric gets up to take a look, but is obviously frightened, as he should be. The smell is hanging around, thick and cloying. He looks down the hole to the ground level and backs away slowly. That's when we hear it. Everyone freezes. Ellie is all over Eric now. Everyone's too afraid to move. The voice was flat and slow, like some sort of mongoloid, trying to figure out how to into words. It keeps repeating it, the sound slowly changing over time. We're huddled up together. Everyone's here, so we know no one is messing with us, and my uncle doesn't have any neighbors for miles. Who messed with the ladder? Everyone turns to look at me. That was my fucking voice, what the fuck? Shake my head vigorously and realize the creature was practicing my voice and is now saying other things in my voice, catching onto speech way more quickly than before. None of us have cell phones because this was the late 90s-ish, so we couldn't really have called the cops anyways. We're all just kind of huddled together, trying not to talk because hearing it say things we have is extremely disconcerting. Silently thankful it was stupid enough to remove the ladder. The smell starts to fade slowly, and I figure it's gone by the time the stench is gone. Get balls of steel out of nowhere. Decide we should all drop down and make a break for the house. Everyone sort of agrees. Jeremy and Jess don't want to be left alone, so they end up agreeing. The 8 of us collect around the hole and take a peek. We don't see anything but some smears of that reddish-brown goop on the floor. Push it to the back of my mind. Decide I'll go first. Drop down. Wave everyone down. We were all sort of uncoordinated and messed up from the beer we've had, but thankfully it wasn't much. Everyone's down in a few moments. We grab hands like 5-year-olds and start to walk to the house at a brisk pace. Not wanting to draw its attention and not wanting to trample over each other like idiots. We hear this wet smack on the concrete floor of the barn. F this. Nope. Done. Everyone starts to run, barely holding each other's hands. My hand slips from Diana for a moment, but a strong, warm hand grabs it again, and no one calls out like they're lost. All 8 of us return to the house. Wait, 8? Me, Eric, Jeremy, Robert, Diana, Ellie, Jessica. That's 7. Everyone seems to realize this and nubs the fuck out. Looking at everyone else. There were only 7 of us again. I want to puke when I realize it wasn't Diana's hand that grabbed onto me the second time, but for some reason it didn't follow us into the house. Maybe it wasn't a fan of the late 70s decor. I don't know. We scramble through the living room. I stop and grab my uncle's compound bow and a few arrows from the display cabinet for some reason, as if I'm gonna knock an arrow and kill this X-Files motherfucker when I haven't gone hunting in over a year. Everyone piles up into the kitchen. It's raised up and away from the living room and kinda looks out onto it, where the main door is. I sit and watch over the sink, fingers trembling, barely able to hold the $1,000 bow in my hand. Might as well be a paperweight. We hear this wet smacking and thudding against the front door. The screen door shaking as well. It's asking in my voice, and others now, to be let in, slowly stringing words together from other sentences it heard to make its own. It stops after a while, and we start to calm down. I go find a phone. While I'm doing this, I hear this soft tapping on glass. I freeze and I spin around. This jerking, twisting amalgamation of flesh, wearing a mix of all our faces, is tapping almost politely at the sliding glass door of the patio. I lose my shit and almost go to draw and shoot, but something tells me it can't enter the house without being invited. I inch slowly away. Its eyes are following me up to the kitchen, and it stares at me, just tapping and tapping. We all keep a watch, but it can't really do anything, so it jerks, slithers, shifts away, and tries the front door again. It continues into the light of the morning. We all said fuck it the next day. I left the bag of feed open for all the animals, and we drove to Robert's house and camped out in the basement for Saturday and Sunday. My uncle acted pretty weird when I brought it up, and moved out 2 months later. We never spoke again. I think he tried to sacrifice me to it, or something.
Hi, X. I need some massive fucking help right now. I've been a long time lurker on X because I enjoy the Skinwalker stories and the like, but never posted anything because I've never seen anything worth pointing out. I don't know if this is as a result of reading too many Skinwalker stories and it's fucked with my mind, but I think it's better if I green text it, cause this is some stuff I haven't seen on this board in my life. Be me, cracker white dude, live in rural Montana. And before I heard you've been playing too much Far Cry 5. Hope County isn't a real place anyway, I think. I live in a fairly mountainous area, a little town at the foot of some large unnamed hills that we all call the mountains anyway. Now that I'm actually writing this up, I have to decide whether or not they're hills or mountains. You can do a proper hike up these things, so I'm going to call them mountains for the time being. So I decide I'm going to do a hike up one of these mountains. I wasn't looking for trouble. It'd actually been a few months since I'd been on X at the time of doing this, so the idea of paranormal shit or Bigfoot or whatever didn't even cross my mind. We did get mountain lions and bears around, so I brought some guns. Sidearm, a Raging Hornet revolver. I fucking love this gun, by the way. Guys, it uses .22 Hornet rounds. Go ask on K if you need clarification. I'm much more active over there, which are like these little rifle rounds that go so fucking fast. And as a bonus, it comes with 8 rather than the standard 6-shot a revolver has. A proper firearm. I bring a .45 70 government lever action. Again, I bought this thing in my old days of lurking, and I saw green text where people fired big guns like Mozzins at various cryptids and them bouncing. So I wanted a really fucking big gun. People hunt elephants with .45 70 governments. Anyway, I bring my tent. Probably not the smartest idea if there are bears and mountain lions, but light a fire, they'll keep their distance. Begin the hike. Lever action on my right shoulder, tent and sleeping bag over my left, revolver in my waist holster. Decide to go alone because most of the other folks in my town are annoying Montanese. Originally from California, but moved up here for better gun laws and cheaper housing. Hike for about 2 or 3 hours. Still see absolutely nothing out of the ordinary. I'm now in the woods for the first time in several years. Never actually been up here before, so I'm seeing everything completely new. Finally find a nice little plateau. Pretty much as idyllic as you could get. Beautiful green grass, a lovely clean pond of blue, and a stunning vista out over the town and the road to the next. Decide to pitch my tent there. Why not? I'm enjoying myself hugely at this point. Beautiful scenery all alone, guns, tent, tinder out for starting a fire. Feel kind of bad about burning the beautiful green grass, but quickly banish that notion from my head when I think about the mountain lions. Take my shoes off and dip them in the pond. It's cold, but not too cold. Crack, crack. Turn around and draw the Raging Hornet. There's a bobcat sitting in one of the trees the other side of my tent. Never mind that gif. Bobcats are nasty, but they're smart enough to steer well clear. Feel very chilled out. Wasn't actually thinking this at the time, but cryptids have a tendency to frighten wildlife, so the bobcat just proved that there was nothing here. Night falls, start to build up this fire. I would like to line up some rock targets and plink them with the Raging Hornet, but it doesn't have a threaded barrel, so I can't get a silencer. And I don't want to scare the smaller wildlife away. This place is so nice. Fire is burning nicely. Can see the entire plateau and can see the higher part of the mountain I plan to trek up tomorrow. I hear a crunch. I look to my right and see a glimpse of something reflecting the firelight. My hand goes to the gun, but I don't draw it. Out of the trees walks out an older dude, probably in his 40s. I'm 29 by the way, carrying a coach gun, broken at the breech over his arms. It was the gun that was glinting. It was pretty well polished. Need to get myself a coach gun someday. They're cool. Little confused, nobody ever goes up here and there's a lot of mountain to cover if he's looking for me. None of the Montanese would tell me why they didn't go, but they never warned me against it. Wave over to him. Evening. And to you, stranger, he replies. I gesture for him to sit down. I ask him what he's doing in the mountains. I live up here. I have a cabin on one of the other mountains. Says he's a hunter, travels all over the mountains each day looking for things. Says that he was out here today following a mountain lion with a coach gun. Okay, .mp4. He has some beer. We drink for a while, saying very little. Shotgun dude gets up and walks off randomly and disappears into the mountains again very quickly. Little did I know that I had just encountered my first cryptid. It only occurred to me about now, but that guy didn't speak in a Montanese accent. He had a Californian accent. Not just that, but now I actually recognize him. When I was a kid, he lived 2 doors down from me. Lent my parents an axe to chop down some of the trees in our garden. Although, bear in mind that at the time, I didn't remember him. I was a little spooked by this guy, but I had no reason to freak out. Other than this dude trying to hunt a mountain lion with a 12 gauge loaded with probably 00 buck, shell said 00 on them. Wake up in the morning after a pleasant night's sleep and start to see things being off. First thing I notice when I leave my tent is a mound of spent shotgun cartridges next to the embers of the fire, burnt out in the night. There had been no firing in the night. 12 gauges are loud, so you could hear them from across the mountain range. Also, the beautiful blue spring I dipped my feet in the other day was now brown and dark. Again, this is the first time I've been on X for months, so in the back of my mind, I had a little notion that maybe something paranormal is going on, but I ignored it and carried on. Began to pack up my tent, pulled out the rod and shoved it back in my bag. Cycled all the rounds of my 45-70 just to be sure it still worked. My face when it's a rust-proof gun, but I still check it all the time. Begin to set off higher up the mountain, internally debating whether it would be a good thing or a bad thing if I met Shotgun Dude again. I'm not a hunter, so I make a lot of noise moving through the brush that's there. He will hear me coming. Eventually decide what could possibly go wrong if I never see him again. Summit the mountain and begin heading down on the other side. The plan was to make it from where I started on the southernmost mountain to the foot of the northeast, where there was a train station back to town. Starting to regret not shooting the bobcat. I'm kind of hungry. Tactically shit myself. Go prone and pull out the lever action. That was the sound of someone with a coach gun giving something both barrels. Thud. In front of me landed the recently shot carcass of a mountain lion, bleeding from 2 large wounds, one in the hindquarters, one on the neck. What the fuck is going on? Only thing I could possibly put this up to is Shotgun Dude hit it, but that's not what 2 shotgun hits with 00 buck look like. It looks like something bayoneted this thing. I pull out my own bayonet. Oh yeah, I have a bayonet. I was gonna put it on the lever action, but then I remember that it's a completely civilian gun and never supposed to have a bayonet on it. Hey, Shotgun Dude, are you there? I call out. The response I got sounds sort of like the cooing of a pigeon, but louder. Complete dead silence, no birds, nothing. Thoroughly spooked now. I used the bayonet to take the hind legs off the mountain lion. After watching the Life of Boris cooking videos, start using this thing as a huge cooking knife like he does. Decide to take them with me for when I next make camp. Continue hiking. Because I'm paranoid now, I decide to walk with my rifle in my hands instead of over my shoulder. Continue walking down the trail. Run into another trail of spent 00 buck shells. Start thinking this guy hoarded a bunch of 00 buck shells and is dropping them everywhere to troll me. Totally on edge after the thing falling down on me. Looking everywhere for any sign of this guy. Suddenly out of nowhere I'm hit by a horrible fucking smell. This is when it started to dawn on me exactly what was going on with this guy. As I said, I've been lurking on X for a while, so I know exactly what the smell of blood and burnt copper means. Work the action one time and reload the shell. It's somewhat comforting and makes a rather menacing noise. Round the corner and see a figure about 30 feet in front of me. It's Shotgun Dude. He has his back to me. Shotgun nowhere to be seen. Clothes somewhat ragged. At the time, I didn't exactly get what was going on. I assumed that this guy had got hit by a skinwalker and was about to go ape on me. Spoilers, that's not what's going on at all. Decide to do what I wanted to do if I was ever in a 4chan green text. Take the initiative. Hey you, put your hands up over your head and turn around slowly. Shotgun Dude begins heaving. Looking kinda like he's laughing, a really deep laugh, or just crawled out of drowning and is retching up water. No vomit, no laughing noise either. I raise my 45-70 and give him a warning just over his head. Or that's what I was supposed to do. What actually happened was a loud crack, almost as loud as the sound of a rifle shot. Shotgun Dude falls to the ground. When he gets up, it's not Shotgun Dude. It's still wearing jeans like Shotgun Dude was, but no shirt. A very hairy, almost woolly chest. And a goat head. A goat head with one of those horns cut in two because I'd shot off its horns. The goatman got up and scrambled away up the rocks. I went to pick up the shattered horn. It was about 7 inches long and hollow. I would have kept it as a trophy, but Alas, things didn't go well. I imagine this is probably what made those holes in the mountain lion. Keep on the trail. The smell faded away when the goatman ran away. Keep my rifle shouldered at all times. I've seen enough green techs to know that they don't always have the stink right there with them. Decide that if I make it through this, I'm gonna knight myself for bravery. Load up another 45-70 round. By now it's still faster to continue my journey over the mountains and get to the train station rather than turn back. Double time it over the mountains, decide not to stop until late afternoon, by which point I've made it more or less to the summit. Find another plateau that I could camp out on. I don't want to pitch a tent though. I want somewhere I can get my back up against a wall so the goatman can't come up behind me. That's what I find. A little rocky ridge about 2-3 meters high, overhangs just a little bit. No chance of anything climbing over it, and even if they did, they'd land in front of me instead of on top of me. Roll out my sleeping bag on the rocky ground. Collect some wood and start a fire to cook the mountain lion legs. Honestly, I had expected something more out of the trip, but all the animals must have been scared away by the cryptids. Starving by the time I'm cooking the legs all the way through. Never tasted mountain lion before. Actually kinda tastes good. Night falls. I'm sleeping with my back up against the rocks, the rifle on my lap and the revolver in my hand. I can't sleep. Too much adrenaline in my system for it to be able to shut down and effect repairs. After a couple of hours of being completely 100% awake, I see it. A pair of pinpricks of light on the other side of the plateau. I immediately shoulder the rifle and fire at it. Hear an ungodly screech the likes of which I cannot compare. Fuck, I understand completely what the green techs are talking about now that I'm in one. The pinpricks disappear. It was at this point I made a fatal mistake. I got up to look. I slung the rifle over my shoulder and instead held the raging hornet in my hand for better precision at close range. Creep over slowly. Feel like I'm doing a Minecraft crouch. Get to the ridge where the eyes were peering over. See a splatter of some liquid that I assumed was blood. Nothing there at all. No corpse. Make my way back towards the sleeping bag. Oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck, dot give. 2 pinpricks of light open above the sleeping bag. I am so completely terrified that I can't even move. The creature lifts itself out of the sleeping bag. It's tall, about 7 or 8 feet tall. Its head is about 2 feet tall. Completely pale white, naked. Jaw extends outwards. Long, spindly legs and arms. Letting out a blood-curdling howl, the thing charges straight for me. I fire 1 shot, 2 shots, 3 shots, then it's upon me. The thing grabs my gun arm, opens its mouth even wider, wide enough to straight up eat my head. The smell is disgusting. Blood and copper turned up so badly. I was so sure that this was the end. I make a kick for it and then hit it right in the crotch. No reaction. Continues getting closer to eating my head. I suddenly hear the one thing I never expected I would hear in my life. Especially not now. A piercing screech from my left. In an instant, the goatman pierces the creature's side with its one remaining horn. The creature bellows with the fury of 1,000 suns and drops me. I had no idea why, but the goatman, which earlier today I had shot at and wounded, jumped into battle to defend me. Both cryptids screeched like crazed pepes. It was so deafening it made the sound of gunshots seem like the popping of popcorn in a microwave. I pick up my raging hornet from where I dropped it and empty the last 5 shots into the ungodly creature as I ran away. All 5 shots hit. All 5 bled, but the creature doesn't flinch and continues to wrestle with the goatman. Neither side was given an inch. The goatman's horn was about 3 inches deep into the creature, dripping with blood. The creature's arms were on the goatman's shoulders trying to push it into the ground. Despite being at least 3 feet taller than the goatman, it was having limited success. Abandon the tent, abandon the sleeping bag, abandon the goatman's horn. Fuck it. I'm not endangering my life over those material objects that I could get more of later. Except for the goatman horn. But googling it later, I couldn't tell it apart from a regular goat horn. Run as fast as I can down the trail without risk of injuring myself. I can still hear the ungodly screams of the dying animals locked in battle to the death behind me. Open the raging hornet, spin the cylinder as I practice to empty out the shells and begin loading up the 22 hornet rounds again as I run. I ran all night until I made it to the foot of the mountain. The sounds of the demonic battle had almost faded into the background. By the time I made it to the train station, I was exhausted, starving, sweating, and thirsty. Collapsed on the platform before I could board a train. In the morning, I awoke in the station office with the manager having dragged me into the office and planted me on the futon. My temperature was up. My face was white and my shoulders and arms were covered in cuts where rocks and leaves had cut them as I rushed away. My memory is super hazy about running away just after reloading my gun. A few flashes of crashing through bushes and tree branches, then at the foot of the mountain, then at the train station, then waking up in the office with a warm cup of coffee. The station manager asked me what the fuck happened. I told him I was attacked by a pair of mountain lions, shot one and ran away from the other. Tells me that I shouldn't run from big cats. Ignore him. Get next train back home and collapse exhausted. I phoned my family and told them about it. My parents don't believe me. My sister, who is also a lurker, told me to post it here and ask for advice. It's taken me the last 3 days to put together a coherent green text from the memory of it. I at the very least hope someone gets some enjoyment out of it. Thank you for listening to my rambling ex.
So my parents used to be big outdoor buffs. My father is an ex-champion hobby boat racer, and my mom was an Alabama-raised country girl. So they always wanted to camp and go sailing and fishing and shit when I was little. They went on a trip with some friends of theirs when I was about 10. Read as 16 years ago. And since then, they refused to go camping anymore. Ever. My dad told me the story sometime after I had turned 18. It still makes me wonder, considering the following. My parents moved a lot, and only had one set of friends they really kept in touch with at all times. Danny and Lisa weren't outdoor nuts like my parents were, but they were friends, and it's fun to camp with your friends, right? So they all planned a 5-day trip to a lake south of where we lived, Willow Creek, that was on Danny's father's property, so they could camp on that property and fish all they wanted, then go to the lake with ease. They all left, and everything from now on is from my father's account. He told me this once, and only once, and got drunk after he told me, which is extremely uncharacteristic of him. The first 2 days were normal, just camping, drinking, sharing stories while fishing, and boating and water skiing heaven. It was just young adults / parents having fun. The second night, all night, everyone kept hearing weird yelps and barks, like 2 dogs were in a fight, but were both just hurt and yelping the whole time. They figured coyotes and slept. The next day, they continued on their adventures. That night, they kept hearing those noises, but they were extremely close to the camp. So my father and Danny went out to see if they could scare them off, while my mom and Lisa stayed behind, scared out of their minds, hiding in a tent, probably reading the Bible or something. Anyways, my dad and Danny went out to look for these fighting coyotes, searching by following the sound. My dad had a shotgun, and Danny a machete. They were hoping to scare the coyotes, or whatever they were, with a gunshot. They got to the clearing, and they could hear the noise extremely loud, but it seemed to be from multiple directions, as if the sound were distant from each other. My dad is a bit of a cook. Swears he saw Bigfoot at 14. But this is different. He just told Danny to go back. No questions. No explanation. Just, Danny, we need to go back. So they did. But the sounds didn't fade away this time. Danny nervously asked my dad what was going on, but my dad wouldn't tell him. He just kept shushing him. Danny's a bit of a goofball, hence why I always liked my Uncle Danny. So he thought my dad was getting him back for a prank. He kept nudging my dad to try and get him to say, "Gotcha," but my dad never untensed. Finally, they got close to the creek. It ways up from the camp, and my dad told Danny to run. Fast. Sprint. Then my dad took off. No remorse. Danny apparently followed, but tripped and called for my dad. But my dad, who tears up and sputters a bit at this part, Also, uncharacteristic of him. Refused to go back for him. Even though Danny started calling for help. Danny was yelling that his leg was broken. It hurt, etc. But my dad just kept running. Then, my dad, my mom, and Lisa all say they heard what sounded like a really, really, really fucking loud cougar growl. Imagine two lionesses going at it, amplified by a 70 Marshall full stacks. That's how loud they said it was. It made my dad's ears ring. After that, Danny stopped screaming for help. My dad got back to camp, and the ladies asked what the fuck was going on. But my dad just said something was out there. My mom, being the practical woman she is, says, "Well, no shit. What was it?" My dad wouldn't answer. Lisa is freaking out, asking where Danny is. But my dad just keeps saying he'll be here in a second. A few hours pass by, and the ladies are extremely worried about Danny, while my dad apparently would cringe when they said something. Finally, from the opposite side my dad arrived from, came Danny, walking just fine up to the camp, wordlessly. My dad cocked his rifle, but waved it away as survival readiness. Something my mom says she won't forget, because that's what tipped her off that something was wrong. Danny first walked up and nudges his way next to my mother, but after the weird looks and the death glare from my father, moved closer to Lisa, who had been nagging him for about 10 minutes, but he would either grunt yes or no, or would just stare into the fire. My dad finally asked Danny what happened to his leg, and Danny looked up, confused, almost. My dad told him, "I thought you said it was broken." Danny looked at him and replied, "Broken." Then on cue, started yelling, "Steve, ow, my leg, I think it's broken." I know writing that part, I can just imagine it all too fucking well. The ladies grabbed medkits and first aid and water and were rationalizing it as him going into shock. But upon getting his pants off, with much difficulty, as he refused to help them, and actually would make it harder for them to remove them. There was no obvious break, no blood, just bruises all up and down his side. Lisa kept asking him what happened, but he would grunt and wave her hands away from the bruises. My dad said, "He's fine, let's just sleep." My mom gave him the "Are you fucking kidding me?" look, and he gave her the "Do it, woman" look. That's right, old school and still working as fuck. And so she complied, as he never does that, and they went to their tent. They said they heard Lisa nagging and one-sided arguing with Danny because he would never reply when she asked him questions, which I just think is a genius wife enraging tactic. And so she finally yelled she's going to pee. Danny asked if he could come with her, since there was animals out there. In not so many words, she said okay, and they left. My dad woke up about 10ish in the morning and started making breakfast. Danny and Lisa were gone. My mom asked where they were, but my dad wouldn't reply. After a little while, they both came back, rather unceremoniously and without a word. They weren't holding hands or in each other's arms, or arm over the shoulder or anything, like they always were, just kind of awkwardly standing next to each other. They refused food, and Danny would randomly yell out, "My leg." And Lisa kept complaining of feeling ill. My mom suggested they should go home and call off the trip on account of Danny's leg, who had not been limping at all, to my mom's horrified recollection. And the two nodded. My father just kind of watched. They all agreed, so Danny and Lisa got into my parents' car, not theirs, and just waited. They didn't pack up their tents, food, coolers, bags, anything. My dad came over and asked if they were going to grab their things, and they shook their heads. My dad asked, "Why don't you take your car?" and they both said, "Broken." Just like Danny had last night, in a creepy, practical way. My dad sighed and packed up the car, and they drove off. Danny and Lisa stayed quiet the whole way there, except for random mumblings to each other, completely undecipherable. My parents took them home and came back and got me, and we could all tell something was wrong, besides coming back days early. They said Danny got hurt, so they came home. This part's on me from now on. After they all got home, I asked if we could go see them, but my dad replied no a little too quickly, and I thought he was mad at me, so I left to go play PlayStation. I remember cause I missed them, and then he was so mean, so I snuck back upstairs and listened from the stairwell, and overheard my parents and grandparents talking about how something wasn't right. It was like those stories, yada yada yada. I assumed they were talking about something random and got bored, and went to go play some more PlayStation. A few weeks later, I asked my dad about Uncle Danny, and my dad said that we're not going to see them anymore. I was mad, and so I demanded to know why. He told me something about his dad being sick, and so I was sad. Then I forgot about it, and life went on. Fast forward about 5 years. I'm at a supermarket where I used to live when all this happened. It was also by where Danny and Lisa lived, only on the other side of the road, being 10. I was never allowed to go over there, but now I can drive. I decided to go see the old house, check out Danny and Lisa's house. I'm a nostalgic person, and see the only neighborhood. I'm driving slowly, and rather creepishly, down my old street, when I spot Danny walking down the street. Excited as fuck, I flag him down, pull over, and get out to talk to him. He seemed stiff to me, kind of robotic, I guess you could say, when he hugged me, but it was way too tight, and it felt like he was trying to smother me. I asked him how'd he been, and he said alright. I asked him where Lisa was, and he said at home, so I asked if I could see her, and he agreed. I walked with him, and asked him about all kinds of people, and tried to catch up, but he didn't remember, or didn't care about 90% of it, which seemed odd, because Danny was always my awesome involved Uncle Danny. Also, I'm on X, so I'm automatically paranoid as shit. So I asked him a couple of obvious trick questions, and he failed miserably. And now, I'm a bit nervous. We get to his door, and he opens it, and the smell of a goddamn meat locker pours out. A horrid, incomparable smell just assaults my nostrils. The place is a wreck. Shit is just everywhere. Everything is coated in dust and shit, and nothing looks clean. Laundry's everywhere. No lights are really on. It's a mess. I'm more than a little freaked out, and I asked him what happened here, and he grunted. A really weird, guttural grunt. So I asked after Lisa, and she yelled from the kitchen, which was behind a wall facing the room I was in. It wasn't a full wall, with the top not touching the ceiling, so I could smell and hear something cooking. I walked into the kitchen, expecting to see Lisa making some normal food, and planning on asking Lisa why Danny was acting weird. But I saw something unforgettable. She was standing in the kitchen, butt-ass naked, covered in blood, cooking some kind of mangled mess, surrounded by thousands of bones. I was just smart enough to notice a pile of motherfucking collars in the corner, though not until after I intentionally remembered this at home. Fucking pet collars. I yelled, and Danny lunged at me. I kind of sidestepped away from him, clumsily, and ran out the door. Danny gave chase, and I got into the car and noped the fuck out, as my little blazer could. I got home, called the police, gave them the address, and went straight to my dad. He punched me in the face and told me he overheard the address. I tried to apologize, and he yelled at me, so I yelled at him for lying to me. So he hit me again, then hugged me, and said he was sorry. I tried to ask him, but he rather strongly told me to shut the fuck up and forget about it. The police came to my house and told me they didn't find anyone living there. But my story matched the description, and the place was a fucking nightmare. They told me they suspected the previous owners left, and a mixture of wild animals and burglaring homeless people had been living there. My dad, being the fucking ridiculous genius he is, asked why the house hadn't been foreclosed, or bill payments hadn't been an issue. The cop stammered, then said they'd look into it. Apparently Danny's father had still been paying for all of it, as per some agreement when they got married. I still haven't seen them since, and my dad only told me once the story beforehand. My meeting up with them was pure coincidence, and only made the story worse. A couple of years after all that happened, my dad told me the story. Got drunk in his drunken stupor that night and told me. He knew what would happen to Danny. He knew what they were. Better him than my dad.